Hey guys, tonight we plunge into the shadowy heart of ancient Persia, where the air hums with secrets and the sand seems to whisper your name. Picture yourself standing on a moonlit dune, the desert stretching endlessly before you, and somewhere beneath your feet lies a hidden chamber, so quiet it swallows sound itself. The mysterious silence of the Persian torture chambers isn't just a story, it's a puzzle wrapped in dread. And spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this if you're allergic to goosebumps. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I'm curious where you're chilling tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge across the desert, the crunch of sand under your boots the only sound in this vast, starlit void. The air feels heavy, like it's holding its breath, and you can't shake the feeling that something's watching. Ancient Persia, around 500 BCE, was no picnic. Think Game of Thrones, but with more camels and fewer dragons. The Achaemenid Empire, ruled by kings like Darius I, stretched from India to Egypt, a sprawling beast of power and paranoia. Darius, fun fact, once rebuilt Persepolis, a city so grand it screamed, "Don't mess with me." But beneath the glitz, there was a darker side. Whispers of torture chambers where silence wasn't golden. It was terrifying. You pause, noticing a faint outline in the sand, maybe a trap door. Your torch flickers, casting jittery shadows, and you wonder what kind of twisted mind designed a place where screams didn't echo. Historians still argue whether these chambers were real or just spicy propaganda spread by rival Greeks. But the stories persist. One quirky tidbit. Some say the Persians used silent torture to keep their enemies' suffering secret, so the public wouldn't freak out. Imagine a punishment so quiet, it's like ghosting someone, but with chains. You kneel, brushing sand away, and your fingers graze cold stone. A chill runs through you. Not just from the night air. The chambers, if they existed, were likely built underground, hidden from prying eyes. You picture nobles in their fancy tunics, sipping wine above, while below, someone's world unraveled in silence. It's creepy, right? Like finding out your favorite coffee shop has a dungeon vibe in the basement. The Persians were masters of control, and their torture was less about blood and more about breaking the soul without a peep. You stand, heart thumping, and glance at the stars. They're bright, but they don't help. The desert feels alive, its silence louder than any scream. You're not sure what's worse, the idea of those chambers or the fact that no one heard the victims' cries. Okay, joke time to lighten the mood. Why did the Persian torturer quit? He couldn't handle the quiet life. But seriously, as you take another step, you can't help but wonder what's waiting down there, in the dark, where even your breath might betray you. You're still out here in the Persian desert, the sand cool under your feet, that creepy stone slab from earlier. Remember that trapdoor vibe? Lingering in your mind like a bad dream. The stars above are sharp, like they're judging you, and the silence is so thick you swear it's got its own pulse. You're not alone, though. The ghosts of ancient whispers are creeping closer. Tales of prisoners who dreaded these so-called torture chambers more than death itself. The mysterious silence wasn't just a gimmick. It was a psychological gut punch, and you're about to feel its weight. You shuffle forward, your torch spitting embers, and imagine what it was like for those poor souls. Captives, rebels, maybe even nobles who ticked off the wrong king. The Achaemenid Empire, at its peak under Xerxes I, wasn't exactly handing out participation trophies. Xerxes, by the way, famously led the invasion of Greece in 480 BCE, a historical flex that ended with mixed reviews at Thermopylae. But back home, his enforcers had a knack for making dissenters vanish quietly. You picture a prisoner, chained in the dark, knowing their screams won't reach the surface. That's the kind of fear that sticks, like sand in your socks after a beach day. You stop, catching your breath, and notice the air feels colder, heavier. The stories say the chamber's silence wasn't just about muffling noise, it was a weapon. Historians still argue whether this was deliberate psychological torture or just a side effect of clever engineering, but the effect was the same. Pure dread. One quirky tidbit. Some Persian captives reportedly went mad not from pain, but from the endless quiet, like being stuck in a Zoom call with no one talking. Ever tried holding your breath too long? Now imagine that, but it's your whole existence. You crouch, running your hand over the ground, half expecting another hidden door. Nothing but sand, but your mind's racing. The prisoner's fear wasn't just about what was done to them. It was the not knowing. You're picturing a guy, let's call him Arash, dragged from his village for whispering rebellion. He's thrown into a chamber, and the silence hits like a slap. No clanging chains, no torturer's taunts, just nothing. You'd think torture would be loud, right? Nope. The Persians flipped the script, and it's giving Major quiet kid in class who's secretly terrifying energy. You stand, brushing off your hands, and take a shaky step. Your torch is dimming, and the desert's starting to feel like it's closing in. Joke time, because we need it. Why did the prisoner hate the silent chamber? It was the worst soundtrack ever. But seriously, you're starting to get why those tales of dread spread like wildfire. The silence wasn't just absence. It was presence, a living thing that crawled into your bones. You glance back, half sure the slab's glowing or something equally freaky, and wonder what kind of orders created this nightmare. Who was calling the shots, and why did they want it so damn quiet? You're still trudging through this endless Persian desert, the memory of that creepy stone slab. Yep, the one giving trapdoor energy, fading behind you like a bad Tinder date. The night air's got a bite now, and your torch is barely hanging on, spitting light like it's got a grudge. Those whispers of prisoner's fear, the ones that had you spooked last time, are louder now, curling around you like smoke. But who was behind this silent nightmare? You're about to meet the big shots, Persian kings, and their chillingly precise orders that made the torture chambers a reality. Buckle up. It's about to get royally intense. You pause, the sand shifting under your boots, and picture a grand palace in Persepolis, all gold and marble, where kings like Cyrus the Great or Darius I held court. Cyrus, real talk, was a rock star, founded the Achaemenid Empire around 550 BCE, and basically wrote the OG Human Rights Charter. But even nice guys had a dark side. His successors, especially Darius, ran a tight ship, and tight meant zero tolerance for rebels or traitors. You're imagining Darius, perched on a throne, casually signing off on torture orders like it's just another Tuesday. His decrees weren't messy. They were surgical, designed to keep the empire's enemies quiet. Literally. You take a step, your shadow stretching long and wobbly. The kings didn't just want punishment, they wanted control. Historians still argue whether these silent chambers were Darius's brainchild or a collective vibe from his advisors, but the orders came from the top. One quirky tidbit. Royal scribes reportedly used coded tablets to record torture plans, so even the paperwork was hush-hush. Imagine a bureaucrat in a fancy robe, scribbling, "Silent chamber, ASAP," like it's a grocery list. Gives you chills, right? Like ordering a latte with an extra shot of menace. You crouch, the desert's silence pressing in, and try to picture the logistics. A king's decree would have been gold. Messengers racing across the empire, delivering sealed clay tablets to shadowy enforcers. You're seeing it now. Some poor rebel, maybe caught plotting against the crown, dragged to a chamber where the king's will was law. The torturers, following orders, didn't shout or gloat. They worked in eerie calm, like baristas nailing a foam heart. You're wondering how a king sleeps at night, knowing he's greenlit this kind of dread. Spoiler, probably fine, with silk pillows. You stand, torch flickering, and feel a pang of unease. The desert's too quiet, like it's in on the secret. Joke time to shake it off. Why was the Persian king so calm? He had torture on mute. But for real, you're starting to see the method here. The silence wasn't just for kicks. It was power. A king who could silence screams could silence an empire. You glance around, half expecting a royal messenger to pop out of the dunes with a clay tablet and bad news. What's next? What kind of twisted tech made this silence possible? You're still out here in the Persian desert, the sand whispering secrets under your boots, that royal decree vibe. Remember Darius signing off on silent torture like it's a grocery list? Still giving you the creeps. Your torch is on its last legs, casting jittery shadows that make every dune look like it's hiding something. The air's so still it feels like the world's holding its breath, and you're about to stumble onto the star of this nightmare. A device that muffled screams without leaving a single mark. Yeah, the Persians weren't messing around, and you're about to get up close with their twisted genius. You shuffle forward, the desert stretching endlessly, and picture a hidden chamber, walls smoothed by centuries of secrets. The Achaemenid Empire, around 500 BCE, was all about innovation. Think Royal Road for mail delivery, like ancient FedEx. But their torture tech? Next level. You're imagining a device, maybe a bronze gag or a padded hood, designed to trap sound like a black hole. Historical records are fuzzy, but clay tablets hint at tools for quiet correction. You're seeing it now. A prisoner, let's call her Zara, strapped into this thing, her screams swallowed before they even start. It's like noise-canceling headphones, but evil. You pause, heart thumping, and scan the ground for another trapdoor. Yep, that slab's still haunting you. Historians still argue whether these devices were real or just Greek gossip to paint Persians as monsters, but the stories are too consistent to dismiss. One quirky tidbit: some say the device was lined with wool from sacred goats, because apparently even torture had a holy vibe. You're picturing a torturer fussing over goat wool like it's a Pinterest project. Creepy, but kind of hilarious, like a villain with a craft hobby. You crouch, the sand cold against your knees, and try to wrap your head around it. The device wasn't about blood or bruises. It was about stealing your voice. You're imagining Zara, eyes wide, realizing no one will hear her. The silence isn't just physical. It's a mind game, like being ghosted by the universe. You're wondering how they even tested this thing. Did some poor intern have to scream into it first? The thought's grim, but you can't help picturing a Persian engineer nodding like, "Yep, that's silent enough." You stand, torch barely glowing, and feel the desert's weight. Joke time, because this is heavy. Why'd the torture device fail at stand-up? No one heard the punchline. But seriously, you're starting to get why this device was legendary. It wasn't just about pain. It was about erasing you, one silent scream at a time. You glance around, half expecting to hear a muffled cry on the wind. What's out there, in the dark, where these chambers hid their secrets? You're deep in the Persian desert now, the sand crunching under your boots, that scream-muffling device. Yep, the one with the sacred goat wool, still sending shivers down your spine. Your torch is a pathetic flicker, barely pushing back the dark, and the air feels like it's conspiring against you, heavy with secrets. You're no longer just wandering. You're drawn toward whispers of hidden chambers buried somewhere out here, in the desert's dark heart. The mysterious silence of the Persian torture chambers isn't just a story anymore. It's a map, and you're following it straight into the unknown. You trudge on, the dunes looming like frozen waves, and picture the Achaemenid Empire at its zenith, around 480 BCE, when Xerxes was flexing his power against Greece. Historically, his empire was a logistical beast, with relay stations for couriers spanning thousands of miles. But out here, away from the royal highways, the desert hid darker truths. You're imagining underground lairs, carved into bedrock, where silence reigned supreme. The stories say these chambers were scattered across the empire, tucked beneath desolate stretches like this one, invisible to all but the king's most trusted enforcers. You pause, wiping sweat from your brow, and scan the horizon. The desert's too quiet, like it's daring you to find something. Historians still argue whether these hidden chambers were real or just tall tales spun by rival empires, but archaeological hints, like unexplained stone structures in Iran's Dasht-e-Kavir, keep the debate alive. One quirky tidbit: locals once believed the desert was cursed, claiming spirits of silent victims haunted these sands. You're half laughing, half checking over your shoulder, picturing a ghost giving you the silent treatment. Spooky, right? Like a horror movie with no soundtrack. You crouch, running your fingers through the sand, hoping for a clue. A trapdoor, a slab, anything. Nothing but grit, but your mind's racing. You're picturing a chamber below, its walls damp and smooth, swallowing sound like a greedy void. A prisoner, let's call him Kaveh, might have been dragged here, blindfolded, the desert's vastness his last glimpse of freedom. You're wondering how they even found these places without GPS. Probably some grim version of Third Dune on the left. The thought's absurd, but it doesn't shake the dread creeping up your spine. You stand, torch nearly dead, and feel the desert's pulse. Or maybe it's your own. Joke time to cut the tension. Why'd the chamber stay hidden? It had the best underground real estate. But for real, you're starting to sense the scale of this. These weren't just torture spots. They were secrets the empire buried deep out here, where the sand keeps its own counsel. You glance around, the dunes seeming to shift in the dark. What else is out here? And who made sure these chambers stayed lost? You're still lost in this Persian desert, the sand clinging to your boots like it's got a personal grudge. Those hidden chambers, remember the ones buried under the dunes, taunting you from somewhere below. Your torch is a sad little glow now, barely cutting through the inky dark, and the silence out here feels like it's sizing you up. You're not just chasing ghost stories anymore. You're about to meet the holy rollers of this nightmare, Zoroastrian priests who shaped the silent torture rituals with a creepy kind of devotion. Get ready. This is where things get spiritually weird. You shuffle forward, the desert stretching out like a bad dream, and picture the Achaemenid Empire around 500 BCE, when Zoroastrianism was the vibe. This religion, founded by the prophet Zoroaster, was all about good versus evil, with fire as a sacred symbol. Think eternal flames, not backyard barbecues. Historically, Zoroastrian priests, or magi, had serious clout, advising kings like Darius the Thirst on everything from war to, apparently, how to make torture extra quiet. You're imagining a priest in flowing robes, standing in a torchlit chamber, muttering prayers while tweaking the silent treatment for maximum dread. You pause, the air cold and still, and feel a prickle on your neck. The priests didn't just bless these rituals. They designed them, believing silence purified the punishment, aligning it with cosmic order. Historians still argue whether this was genuine faith or just a power grab to keep the masses in line, but the result was chilling. One quirky tidbit: some magi reportedly used sacred silence in their own rituals, fasting from speech for days. You're picturing a priest shushing a torturer like, "Bro, keep it holy." It's almost funny, like a librarian running a dungeon. You crouch, scanning the sand for anything, a carving, a clue. But it's just you and the dark. You're imagining a chamber below, where a priest oversees the torture. Incense burning, the air thick with chants that never leave the room. A prisoner, let's call her Mitra, is bound, her screams muffled by that wool-lined device from earlier, while the priest nods, satisfied that chaos is being tamed. You're wondering if the priests believed they were saving souls or just flexing control. Either way, it's giving cult leader energy, and you're not here for it. You stand, torch flickering out, and feel the desert's weight pressing in. Joke time, because this is intense. Why'd the priest love silent torture? It was his kind of quiet time. But seriously, you're starting to see how faith twisted this nightmare. The priests made silence sacred, turning torture into a ritual that felt like it had divine approval. You glance around, half expecting a robed figure to glide out of the shadows. Who else was in on this? And how did they justify it? You're still wandering this Persian desert, the sand gritty under your boots, those Zoroastrian priests. Yep, the ones with their creepy sacred silence, still lingering in your mind like an overzealous yoga instructor. Your torch is basically a candle now, its weak glow making every shadow look like it's up to no good. The desert's silence feels like it's judging you, and you're about to meet the real gatekeepers of this nightmare, the silent judges who sentenced victims to their noiseless fates. Buckle up. These guys make courtroom drama look like a nap. You trudge on, the dunes hulking around you, and picture a grand hall in Persepolis, circa 490 BCE, where the Achaemenid Empire's justice system was no joke. King Xerxes I, fresh off his bridge-building stunt over the Hellespont, true story, he lashed the sea when it misbehaved, relied on judges to keep order. These weren't your friendly neighborhood magistrates. They were elite officials, hand-picked for loyalty, who could send you to the chambers with a nod. You're imagining one? Let's call him Bahram, in a robe so fancy it screams, "I ruin lives," calmly sealing someone's fate. You pause, the air sharp and cold, and feel the weight of their power. The judges didn't just enforce laws. They weaponized silence, choosing punishments that left no trace for gossipy neighbors to whisper about. Historians still argue whether these judges were independent or just royal puppets, but their verdicts were final. One quirky tidbit: some say they used a special seal, shaped like a mute lion, to mark silent torture orders. You're picturing Bahram stamping a clay tablet, all serious, like he's signing for a pizza delivery. It's grimly absurd, like a bureaucrat with a side hustle in dread. You crouch, the sand sifting through your fingers, and try to imagine facing one of these judges. You're picturing a rebel, let's call him Rostam, hauled before Bahram, accused of spreading dissent. The hall's dead quiet, no dramatic gavel, just the judge's stare and a sentence that promises a chamber where screams don't escape. You're wondering how Rostam felt, knowing his voice was already lost. It's like being cancelled, but with higher stakes. The judge's power was in their restraint. No yelling, no fanfare, just a decision that buried you in silence. You stand, torch barely alive, and feel the desert's eerie calm. Joke time, because this is heavy. Why was the judge so chill? He sentenced in silent mode. But for real, you're getting why these judges were feared. They didn't need to raise their voice. Their word was a one-way ticket to oblivion. You glance around, the dunes seeming to lean in, and wonder what tools these judges approved for their quiet justice. What kind of gear made their sentences so terrifyingly effective? You're still out here in the Persian desert, the sand sticking to your boots like it's got separation anxiety. Those silent judges, yep, the ones with their mute lion seals, still haunting you like a bad report card. Your torch is a pathetic flicker now, barely keeping the darkness at bay, and the desert's silence feels like it's daring you to scream. You're not just chasing shadows anymore. You're about to get hands-on with the tools of quiet terror, the twisted gadgets that made the Persian torture chambers so eerily effective. Hold tight. This is where it gets unsettlingly clever. You shuffle forward, the dunes looming like silent sentinels, and picture a hidden chamber, its walls cool and smooth, around 500 BCE in the Achaemenid Empire's prime. This was the era of Darius I, who standardized weights and measures. Super practical, right? But his torturers were just as innovative. You're imagining a toolkit straight out of a dystopian Etsy shop. Padded restraints, soundproof hoods, maybe even a bronze collar that tightened just enough to hush you. These weren't for show. They were precision engineered to inflict pain without a peep, keeping the Empire's dirty secrets on lockdown. You pause, heart thudding, and scan the sand for any sign of those chambers. Still no trapdoor, but you're not giving up. Historians still argue whether these tools were as sophisticated as the stories claim or just exaggerated by freaked-out Greeks, but clay tablet inventories list implements of correction with creepy specificity. One quirky tidbit. Some tools were supposedly engraved with Zoroastrian symbols, like a fire altar, to give the torture a holy glow. You're picturing a torturer polishing a collar like it's fine china, muttering prayers. It's wild, like a serial killer with a vision board. You crouch, the sand cold against your palms, and imagine holding one of these tools, a heavy wool-lined gag, maybe, designed to muffle screams like a cosmic mute button. You're picturing a prisoner, let's call her Shirin, strapped down, her voice stolen by this thing, while her eyes scream what her mouth can't. You're wondering how anyone dreamed this up. Did they have brainstorming sessions? More silence, less mess, someone probably said, sipping ancient tea. It's grim, but you can't look away, like rubbernecking at a historical car crash. You stand, torch on its last gasp, and feel the desert's oppressive quiet. Joke time, because we need a breather. Why'd the torture tool flop at auction? No one could hear its value. But seriously, you're starting to grasp the genius here. These tools weren't just for pain. They were for erasing resistance, one silent sob at a time. You glance around, the dunes seeming to whisper, and wonder about the victims who faced these gadgets. What was it like to beg in a void where no one could hear? You're still trudging through this Persian desert, the sand gritty and clingy under your boots, those eerie torture tools. Remember the wool-lined gag with its holy fire altar bling, still rattling around in your head like a creepy earworm. Your torch is basically a memory now, leaving you to stumble through the dark, the desert's silence pressing in like an uninvited guest. You're not just chasing gadgets anymore. You're about to feel the weight of the victim's silent pleas, the despair of those trapped in chambers where their voices were swallowed whole. Brace yourself. This one's heavy. You shuffle forward, the dunes hulking around you like they're in on the secret, and picture the Achaemenid Empire around 490 BCE, when justice was swift and merciless. This was the era of Xerxes I, who famously built a pontoon bridge across the Hellespont, engineering flex of the century. But for the empire's enemies, like rebels or traitors, there was no such grandeur. only the suffocating dark of a torture chamber. You're imagining a prisoner, let's call him Farhad, chained to a stone slab, his screams muffled by that bronze collar from earlier, his pleas dissolving into nothing. You pause, the air cold and thick, and feel a knot in your chest. The victim's despair wasn't just about pain. It was the isolation, the knowing that no one would hear. Historians still argue whether the chambers were designed to break spirits more than bodies, but the stories paint a grim picture. One quirky tidbit: some prisoners reportedly scratched messages into the walls, not with words, but with patterns, hoping their silent cries would outlive them. You're picturing Farhad's trembling fingers tracing a spiral in the dark, like a tweet no one will ever see. It's heartbreaking, like a message in a bottle lost at sea. You crouch, running your hands through the sand, half hoping for a trace of those patterns, a connection to the lost. Nothing but grit, but your mind stuck on Farhad, his eyes wide, begging for mercy in a void that doesn't care. You're wondering what he did to end up here. Spoke out against the king? Stole a noble's horse? The silence doesn't judge, it just erases. You're imagining his thoughts, memories of his village, the smell of bread, a kid's laughter, slipping away as the chamber steals his voice. It's like being trapped in a bad dream with no snooze button. You stand, the darkness total now, and feel the desert's oppressive hush. Joke time, because this is crushing. Why'd the prisoner's plea fail? It got lost in translation. But seriously, you're starting to feel the human cost of these chambers. The victims weren't just names on a tablet. They were people, silenced forever. You glance around, the dunes seeming to pulse, and wonder how this nightmare played out closer to the Empire's heart. What was happening in the palaces, where the powerful turned a blind eye? You're still out here in the Persian desert, the sand scratching at your boots like it's trying to tell you something, the echo of Farhad's silent pleas, those desperate scratches in the dark, still tugging at your heart. The nights swallowed your torch completely, leaving you to feel your way through the dunes, the silence so thick it's practically a roommate. You're not just wandering now, you're sneaking into the heart of power, the royal palace of Persepolis, where the glittering facade hid the ugly truth of the torture chambers. Get ready to tiptoe through some serious opulence and dread. You push forward, the desert giving way to a vision of Persepolis around 480 BCE, its massive columns and golden griffins gleaming under the sun. This was the Achaemenid Empire's showpiece, built by Darius I and jazzed up by Xerxes I, who threw parties so lavish they'd make a modern influencer weep. Historically, the palace was a bureaucratic hub, with scribes logging everything from grain to gold. But beneath the sparkle, you're picturing a network of secrets, whispers of chambers where the Empire's dirty work was kept on the down low, far from the banquet halls. You pause, the air sharp with imagined incense, and feel the weight of the palace's double life. The kings and nobles lived large upstairs, sipping wine, while below, victims like Farhad faced the silent void. Historians still argue whether the palace itself housed torture chambers or just outsourced the grim stuff to desert hideouts, but the secrecy was airtight either way. One quirky tidbit: some say the palace had soundproofed rooms for sensitive meetings, which might have doubled as torture spots. You're picturing a noble shushing a servant like, "Not now, we're correcting someone." It's sly, like a CEO with a trap door in their office. You crouch, imagining the cool marble of a palace floor under your palms, and try to picture the logistics. You're seeing a hidden stairwell, maybe behind a tapestry of a lion hunt, leading to a chamber where the air's thick with fear. A prisoner, let's call her Azita, is dragged down, her fate sealed by a judge's mute lion stamp from earlier. You're wondering how the nobles slept, knowing what was happening below. Did they toast to justice, or just pretend it wasn't their problem? It's giving major "don't look in the basement" vibes, and you're not sure you'd take the invite. You stand, the desert's chill snapping you back, and feel the silence pulse like a warning. Joke time, because this is intense. Why'd the palace stay quiet? Too many skeletons in the closet. But for real, you're starting to see how the palace was complicit. The torture wasn't just a secret, it was a system. Polished as the throne room, you glance around, the dunes fading into the dark, and wonder about those who fought back. Did anyone dare to challenge this silent machine? You're back in the Persian desert, the sand scraping your boots like it's got a vendetta, the glitz of Persepolis, those golden griffins and secret stairwells, still flashing in your mind like a fever dream. The darkness is total now, no torch to save you, and the silence feels like it's got teeth ready to bite. You're not just creeping through the Empire's shadows anymore. You're about to witness the silent rebellion, where desperate souls turned the torturer's own weapon, silence, against them. Hold on, this is where the underdogs get clever. You stumble forward, the dunes looming like they're eavesdropping, and picture the Achaemenid Empire around 480 BCE, when Xerxes I was busy flexing against Greece. His empire was a well-oiled machine. Historically, it had a postal system so fast it rivaled modern delivery apps. But even the tightest regimes had cracks, and rebels found them. You're imagining a group of prisoners, maybe led by someone like Bahman, a scribe turned traitor, plotting in whispers. They didn't shout defiance. They used silence, passing coded messages under the torturer's noses, turning the empire's obsession with quiet into their own shield. You pause, the desert's chill seeping into your bones, and feel a spark of hope. The rebels' silence wasn't just survival. It was resistance, a middle finger to the system. Historians still argue whether these acts were organized uprisings or just desperate stabs at freedom, but stories of defiance persist. One quirky tidbit: some rebels reportedly used knotted cords, like secret friendship bracelets, to signal plans in the chambers. You're picturing Bahman tying a knot in the dark, smirking like he's hacked the Matrix. It's bold, like texting K to a king's decree. You crouch, sifting sand through your fingers, and imagine being part of that rebellion. You're seeing Bahman and his crew, faces gaunt, passing a cord in a chamber where that wool-lined gag from earlier looms. They don't speak. They don't need to. A glance, a knot, a shared breath, that's their language. You're wondering how they kept hope alive when every sound could betray them. Did they dream of sunlight, of toppling the judges with their mute lion seals? It's like planning a heist in a library, and you're rooting for them, hard. You stand, the desert's silence almost cheering now, and feel a rush of defiance. Joke time, because we need the vibe. Why'd the rebels love silence? It was their best-kept secret. But seriously, you're awed by their guts. They took the Empire's weapon and flipped it, proving silence could scream louder than any cry. You glance around, the dunes soft in the starlight, and wonder how the outside world saw this. Did travelers, maybe Greeks, catch wind of Persia's silent wars? You're still out here in the Persian desert, the sand scraping under your boots like it's trying to trip you, the spark of that silent rebellion, those knotted cords and sneaky glances, still burning bright in your mind. The darkness wraps around you like a heavy blanket, the silence so deep it feels like the dunes are holding their breath. You're not just chasing rebels anymore. You're stepping into the shoes of foreign travelers, Greeks mostly, who caught glimpses of Persia's chilling torture chambers and spilled the tea to the world. Get ready. This is where the story gets an outside perspective. You trudge on, the dunes softening under a faint starlight glow, and picture the Achaemenid Empire around 480 BCE, when Xerxes III was duking it out with Greece. The Greeks, like Herodotus, yep, the father of history, who loved a good story, were fascinated by Persia's power and paranoia. Herodotus wrote about the empire's vast armies and quirky customs, like kings dining alone to avoid poison. But you're imagining him, or some wide-eyed Greek merchant, let's call him Nikos, hearing whispers of silent torture chambers during a dusty caravan stop. Nikos is all ears, scribbling notes like it's the ancient version of a Reddit thread. You pause, the desert's chill nibbling at your fingers, and feel the buzz of gossip across borders. The Greeks didn't just report, they embellished, painting Persia as a land of shadowy cruelty. Historians still argue whether their accounts of the chambers were eyewitness truth or spicy propaganda to rally Greek unity against Xerxes. One quirky tidbit. Some Greek tales claimed Persian torturers used sound-eating demons to silence victims. You're picturing Nikos nodding sagely like, "Totally saw that demon, bro." It's absurd, like a tabloid headline about alien abductions, but it stuck. You crouch, sifting sand as if it holds Nikos's lost scroll, and imagine him in a Persian bazaar, eavesdropping on a merchant's hushed tale. He hears about a rebel like Bahman from earlier, maybe, whose silent defiance rattled a judge. Nikos is hooked, spinning the story into something epic, a chamber where screams vanish, where the empire's grip is invisible but iron-tight. You're wondering how much he got right. Did he see a chamber, or just hear the fear in a trader's voice? It's like trying to fact-check a campfire story, and you're itching to know the truth. You stand, the desert's quiet feeling like a Greek whisper now, and sense the story spreading. Joke time, because we need a breather. Why'd the Greek love Persian gossip? It was torture-ific drama. But for real, you're seeing how these tales shaped Persia's rep. The chambers weren't just a local secret. They became a global legend, thanks to travelers like Nikos. You glance around, the dunes fading into shadow, and wonder how this silent terror rippled beyond Persia's borders. Did it leave a mark on other empires? You're still stumbling through this Persian desert, the sand grinding under your boots like it's got a personal beef, those Greek whispers, Nikos and his sound-eating demons' gossip, still echoing in your head like a catchy but creepy tune. The night's so dark, it feels like the stars gave up, and the silence is practically a character now, stalking you through the dunes. You're not just following travelers' tales anymore. You're digging into how the silent torture chambers left a mark, their legacy rippling through later empires like a grim inheritance. Buckle up. This is where the story gets big-picture spooky. You push forward, the dunes softening under your feet, and picture the Achaemenid Empire's twilight, around 330 BCE, when Alexander the Great rolled in and burned Persepolis to the ground. Historical fact, and a major mic drop moment. But even as Persia's palaces crumbled, the idea of silent torture didn't die. You're imagining later empires, maybe the Romans or Byzantines, catching wind of Persia's methods, tweaking them for their own dungeons. The concept of breaking someone without noise, without mess, was like catnip for control freaks, spreading like a bad meme across the ancient world. You pause, the desert's chill seeping into your bones, and feel the weight of that influence. The silent chambers weren't just a Persian quirk. They were a blueprint for psychological control. Historians still argue whether Rome's own secretive punishments, like banishment to soundproof cells, owed a nod to Persia or just parallel paranoia. But the parallels are eerie. One quirky tidbit. Some Roman interrogators reportedly used padded rooms for quiet questioning, which sounds suspiciously like that wool-lined gag from way back. You're picturing a Roman centurion high-fiving a Persian ghost like, "Nice one, buddy." It's dark, like finding out your favorite snack was invented by a supervillain. You crouch, sifting sand as if it holds the secrets of empires, and imagine a chain of whispers, Persian torturers to Roman jailers to medieval spy masters. You're seeing a prisoner, maybe a thief named Lucius, in a Roman cell, his voice stolen by a borrowed trick, just like Farhad's in that chamber ages ago. You're wondering how far this legacy stretched. Did it creep into the Middle Ages, into shadowy castles? The idea of silence as a weapon feels timeless, like a horror trope that never quits. It's giving evil lives forever vibes, and you're not loving it. You stand, the desert's hush feeling ancient now, and sense the echo of those chambers in every quiet corner of history. Joke time, because this is heavy. Why'd the torture legacy last? It was silently viral. But seriously, you're starting to see how Persia's dark innovation outlived its empire, shaping fear across centuries. You glance around, the dunes fading into shadow, and wonder what physical traces remain. Is there proof buried out here, waiting to be found? You're still out here in the Persian desert, the sand clawing at your boots like it's begging you to stay, the ghostly legacy of those silent chambers, spreading like a bad rumor through Rome and beyond, still humming in your mind. The darkness is absolute, a heavy curtain of night, and the silence feels like it's got its own heartbeat, pulsing through the dunes. You're not just chasing history's echoes anymore. You're digging into the earth itself, searching for archaeology's quiet clues that might prove the chambers were more than myth. Grab your imaginary shovel. This is where the past gets gritty. You trudge forward, the dunes shifting underfoot, and picture the Achaemenid Empire's ruins, scattered across modern Iran around 500 BCE. Archaeologists have unearthed wonders like Persepolis's grand staircases, carved with tributes from conquered lands, real history still standing tall. But you're imagining a dig site out here, maybe in the Dasht-e-Lut desert, where whispers of strange underground structures keep researchers up at night. You're seeing a team with brushes and trowels uncovering a stone slab. Yep, like that trapdoor from way back, that hints at a chamber designed to swallow sound. You pause. The desert's chill biting your fingertips, and feel the thrill of discovery. The evidence is thin. Some irregular rock formations, a few oddly smooth stones. But it's enough to fuel speculation. Historians still argue whether these finds are torture chambers, storage vaults, or just ancient basements. But the silence of the sites feels too perfect, too deliberate. One quirky tidbit. A 19th century explorer claimed to find a mute room with walls so thick, no echo returned, though his notes sound like he had one too many sherbets. You're picturing him shouting hello and getting nothing, like texting a crush who leaves you on red. It's spooky, but you're intrigued. You crouch, scraping at the sand as if you're part of the dig, and imagine unearthing a clue. A shard of bronze, maybe part of that wool-lined collar from earlier, or a tablet listing implements of correction. You're seeing a chamber below, its walls worn but intact, holding the memory of victims like Farhad or Azita. You're wondering what it would feel like to stand there, the air heavy with centuries of quiet. Would you hear their ghosts, or just your own heartbeat? It's like stepping into a horror movie set, and you're not sure you'd stay for the credits. You stand, the desert's silence wrapping you like a cloak, and sense the past just out of reach. Joke time, because this is intense. Why'd the dig fail? The clues were too quiet. But for real, you're starting to feel the frustration of those archaeologists. The chambers are out here, maybe, but they're stubborn, hiding their truths in the sand. You glance around, the dunes soft and secretive, and wonder how this story faded. Did the chambers slip into legend, or are they still waiting to be found? You're still in this Persian desert, the sand soft under your boots like it's trying to lull you to sleep. Those archaeological whispers, slabs and mute rooms teasing from the earth, fading into the back of your mind like a half-remembered dream. The darkness is a gentle weight now, the silence less menacing, more like an old friend who's run out of stories. You're not digging for clues anymore. You're watching the mysterious silence of the Persian torture chambers dissolve into myth, blending with the haze of legend that cloaks ancient Persia. This is the end of the trail, and it's time to let the dunes tell their final tale. You wander forward, the dunes barely visible under a faint starlight shimmer, and picture the Achaemenid Empire's fall in 330 BCE, when Alexander's torches turned Persepolis to ash. Historical fact, and a brutal curtain call. As Persia's power crumbled, so did the clear record of its secrets. You're imagining the chambers, once real or maybe just feared, slipping into campfire stories, their edges softened by time. By the time medieval poets spun tales of Persian kings, the silent tortures were less history, more fable. Ghostly prisons where spirits wept without sound, haunting the imagination of bizarre storytellers. You pause, the desert's breath cool against your skin, and feel the shift from fact to folklore. Historians still argue whether the chambers were ever more than propaganda, a Greek smear campaign that outlived its target, but their mythic pull is undeniable. One quirky tidbit: a 10th century Persian epic mentions a silent cage that trapped a hero's voice, possibly echoing the old torture tales. You're picturing a bard in a smoky tavern, wide-eyed listeners leaning in, as he weaves a yarn about a chamber that ate screams. It's poetic, like a ghost story gone viral before the internet. You sit, the sand cradling you, and imagine the chambers fading into Persia's legendary mist. You're seeing Farhad, Azita, Bahman, their faces from earlier stories, blurring into archetypes, their pain now a cautionary tale whispered to kids who stray too far. You're wondering if the silence itself became the myth, a symbol of power's unseen grip. Did poets know the truth, or did they just love the chill it gave their audiences? It's like the chambers became a boogeyman, real or not, lurking in the cultural shadows. You lie back, the stars faint but steady, and feel the desert's calm seep in. Joke time, because we're winding down. Why'd the chambers turn mythic? They were too quiet to fact-check. But seriously, you're sensing the story's end. The chambers, whether stone or story, shaped Persia's legacy, a reminder that fear doesn't need sound to endure. You close your eyes, the dunes whispering one last secret, and let the tale slip away. The night is soft now, the desert's edge blurring into a gentle hum, like a fan you forgot was running. You're safe, tucked under the stars, the weight of those ancient chambers lifting like mist at dawn. No more silent screams, no more hidden slabs, just the slow, steady rhythm of your own breath, carrying you toward sleep. The Persians are gone, their secrets buried or mythologized, and you're left with a story that's more dream than dread. Let the sand settle, the dunes fade, and the silence become a lullaby. Drift off, knowing the past can't touch you here, in this quiet, cozy moment. Sleep tight, and let the stars keep watch.